If you're hearing my voice, you found your way to a quiet place, where the world outside fades, and the dead finally get a chance to speak. Tonight's theme? Graveyard Voices. 9 true encounters from people who claim the silence of the cemetery isn't silence at all. These aren't ghost tales told around a campfire. These are confessions. Whispers caught between breath and burial. Stories from those who stayed too long among the stones and heard their names called from the dark. But these voices, they're not here to scare you. They just want to be remembered. Still, I'll warn you, once you hear them, you may start listening for them yourself. Most people watch and move on, never hitting that subscribe button. But if you're still here, maybe you belong with us, the ones who stay and listen even when we shouldn't. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments. I always like to know who's awake this late. Now, settle in. Turn down the lights and let the night breathe a little closer. Here are tonight's encounters. The first time I heard the whisper, I thought it was the wind. But the wind doesn't say your name. It was just after midnight when it happened. The air had that damp, heavy chill that seeps into your clothes. I was doing my usual rounds through St. Harlan Cemetery. Flashlight in one hand, coffee in the other. The beam of light caught rows of white stones that seemed to stretch forever. It was dead quiet, no pun intended. Just the crunch of gravel under my boots and the occasional hoot of an owl somewhere near the tree line. Then I heard it. Soft. Too soft. Eli, my name. It came from behind the old marble mausoleum near the center of the grounds. The one I hated going near at night. The thing looked like it had been carved straight from a nightmare. The stone was cracked, streaked with green moss, the family name long worn away by rain. The roof sagged like it was tired of keeping secrets. I froze. My heart thudded so hard I felt it in my throat. I swung the flashlight toward the sound, the beam shaking in my hand. Nothing. Just that slick, wet marble gleaming under the light. I told myself it was a trick of the wind. I even said it out loud like that would make it true. But then it came again, closer. Eli. This time it wasn't the wind. It wasn't the echo of my own thoughts. It was right there, like someone leaning close, whispering from the corner of my ear. I backed away until I hit the wrought iron fence. My pulse was screaming in my veins. I'd worked here for 6 months, long enough to know every corner of this place, every sound it made. I'd never heard a voice like that before. After that night, I started noticing things. The mausoleum was part of my nightly patrol route, but I began cutting that section short. I'd say the weather was bad, or that the ground was too soft to walk through. The truth was, I couldn't bring myself to get near it anymore. But every time I skipped it, I'd hear something else. A soft knock echoing across the grass, a low hum almost musical. Once, when I was locking up the tool shed, I heard a woman humming right behind me. I spun around and the light from my flashlight caught movement near the tombs, but there was nobody there. After the third night, I told myself I was just tired, overworked. My shifts ran late, and being surrounded by graves messes with your head after a while. Then, on the 5th night, I found the footprints. It had rained earlier, leaving a film of mud over the grass. I noticed them when I walked by the main path. A series of small, bare footprints leading from the mausoleum toward the gate. Small enough to belong to a child. The weird thing was, there weren't any prints leading to the mausoleum, just away from it. They stopped halfway through the yard right where the old willow tree stood. The ground there was untouched, no sign anyone had left. Like whoever made them had just vanished. I crouched down, ran my fingers over the prints. The mud was still damp. Fresh. Something brushed against the back of my neck. Cold. Light as a breath. I jerked up so fast my flashlight dropped. It hit the ground, the beam rolling over rows of headstones before landing on the mausoleum door. It was open. Not wide. Just a sliver. But wide enough that I could see darkness inside, deeper than the night around me. I didn't move for what felt like a full minute. My body knew better than my brain. Everything in me screamed, don't go near it, but I did. I don't even remember walking. One moment I was standing by the willow, the next I was at the door. The smell hit me first, stale air, rot, something damp and sweet like wet flowers left too long in a vase. The inside was pitch black. I raised the flashlight and shone it through the gap. Stone floor, dust, a cracked urn in the corner, and then something glinted. A ring, a small gold ring sitting right in the center of the floor as if someone had placed it there. I hesitated. Every inch of my skin prickled, but curiosity won over fear. I reached in through the crack, fingertips brushing the cold metal. "Don't!" I froze. The voice wasn't a whisper this time. It was clear, sharp, female, and it came from inside. My body jerked backward like I'd been shocked. I dropped the flashlight, scrambled on the wet grass, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The light spun wildly, flashing over the doorway. I swear I saw movement, a shadow pulling back into the darkness. I ran. I didn't look back. That night I didn't sleep. I kept hearing it replay in my head, the way she said don't, not angry. Not scared, just warning me. The next morning I went to my supervisor, Marty. He's this old guy who's been working here since before I was born, and he never believes anything. When I told him what happened, he laughed. "You're letting the dead get in your head, kid. Happens to everyone." He said that mausoleum was from the old Beckett family plot. According to him, the place had been sealed for decades after a collapse inside killed a caretaker back in the 80s. I asked if anyone had been buried there recently, and he shook his head. Not since the accident. Ain't no one been in there for years. That made no sense. If it had been sealed for decades, how was the door open? I went back that night even though every part of me told me not to. It was colder than before. The fog hung low, thick enough that I could barely see my own breath. I forced myself to walk the full route this time, all the way to the Beckett mausoleum. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, to prove to myself it was still shut, that I'd imagined everything. But when I got there, the door was open again. And this time, the ring was gone. I started backing away, slow, not taking my eyes off it. My flashlight flickered just once, but long enough for me to catch something written on the door in the condensation. A single word traced in long, shaky letters. "Help." That's when I heard her again. "Eli." The voice was softer now, pleading. "Please." My hands were shaking so bad the flashlight danced over the grass. The voice sounded close, like she was just a few feet away, trapped behind the stone wall. I took one step forward, then another. The closer I got, the colder the air became, until I could see my breath hanging in front of me. I pressed my palm against the marble. It was ice cold, colder than the air around it. Then something pressed back. A hand, flat against the stone from the inside. I yanked my arm away and stumbled backward, heart slamming against my ribs. I wanted to run again, but my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, as the handprint slowly faded into the condensation. When I finally broke free of the paralysis, I ran straight to the gate. Didn't stop until I was outside the cemetery, leaning over the fence, gasping for air. I called Marty right then. He didn't answer. I left him a message saying I was done, I quit, that he could keep the damn keys. I didn't go back the next night. Or the one after. But on the third night, I woke up at 2:17 a.m. to the sound of something tapping against my window. 3 slow taps. Then silence. I live on the second floor. I pulled back the curtain, and for a second I thought I saw someone standing in the yard below. A woman, pale, wearing what looked like an old torn dress. But when I blinked, she was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on my balcony. Small, bare, like the ones from the graveyard. I tried to tell myself they weren't real, that I'd tracked mud in myself somehow, that my brain was making connections where there were none. But that night, when I went to throw out the trash, I saw something glinting by the bin, a gold ring, the same one from the mausoleum. Inside the band, scratched into the metal, were 2 words, "Find me." I haven't gone back to the cemetery since then, but I keep hearing her at night, soft, steady, closer every time. Sometimes it's a whisper, sometimes it's a hum. Last night I woke up to my phone buzzing, an unknown number. I didn't answer, but it went to voicemail. When I played it, there was only static, and underneath, so faint I almost missed it, "Eli, behind the mausoleum." I didn't sleep after that voicemail. Every few minutes I'd replay it, turning the volume up, pressing the phone to my ear like maybe I'd hear something new. It was the same every time, static, my name, that same soft pleading tone. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I had to go back. I told myself it was to find proof, something to show Marty or the cops or anyone. But deep down, I think I already knew. I wasn't going back for them. I was going back for her. The gate to St. Harlan's creaked open like it was holding a grudge. Morning fog still hung heavy over the headstones, and the air smelled like rain-soaked metal. I half expected to see someone waiting for me. Marty, maybe, wondering why I'd shown up after quitting. But the cemetery was empty. Silent. My boots squelched in the wet grass as I made my way toward the center path. The closer I got to the mausoleum, the heavier everything felt. Like the air itself was thickening, pressing down on me. When I reached it, the door was shut again. Perfectly sealed. No footprints. No handprints. No sign of anything. For a second, I just stood there, not sure if I should feel relieved or terrified. I reached out and touched the stone. It was cold, but not freezing like before. Just still. I took a deep breath and crouched by the door. The lock was old and rusted, but I'd brought tools from the shed. My hand shook as I worked the latch loose. It felt wrong breaking into a tomb, but if I didn't, I'd never stop hearing her voice. The metal finally gave with a groan. Dust fell from the frame as I pulled the door open. A wave of stale, humid air hit me in the face, thick with the smell of earth and mildew. I raised my flashlight and stepped inside. The interior was smaller than I expected, barely big enough for 2 coffins and a wall of name plaques. The light caught motes of dust drifting like ash in the air. The walls were slick with moisture, the marble floor cracked and uneven. There were 2 stone coffins. One was intact, sealed tight. The other was split down the middle. The top half slid slightly aside. I could see a gap between the slabs, dark and hollow, and lying in front of it, half buried in the dust, was a small folded piece of paper. I picked it up, hands trembling. The paper was brittle, the ink faded, but I could still make out the words, "I told him not to lock me in." My chest went cold. I looked toward the open coffin, the one with the gap. Inside, something glinted faintly in the beam of my flashlight. Another ring. I crouched down to get a better look, but as soon as my hand touched the lid, the door behind me slammed shut. The sound was so loud it shook the walls. I dropped the flashlight and the beam spun wildly across the stone, cutting through the darkness before settling on the door. It was closed. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Marty, is that you?" Nothing. The air inside the tomb grew heavier, thick enough that every breath burned. My ears started ringing, and beneath the sound I heard it again. That voice. Whispering. Eli. It was coming from inside the coffin. I stumbled backward, tripping over the cracked floor. My flashlight rolled away, landing so the beam pointed straight at the open gap in the stone lid. I could see movement inside, something shifting, slow, like fabric sliding over bone. I told myself to move. To run, but I couldn't. My legs felt locked. Then I heard her again, clearer this time. "Find me." I don't know why I did it. Maybe part of me still thought she was alive somehow, buried by mistake. Maybe I just needed to know. Either way, I grabbed a rusted crowbar from the corner and wedged it under the lid. The stone screamed as it moved. Dust exploded into the air. I shoved with everything I had until the top slid aside enough for me to see inside. There was no body, just dirt. And underneath it, wood. A second coffin, smaller, half-rotted. It looked like it had been buried under the stone one. I dug at the dirt with my hands, pulling it away in clumps. Every handful released another wave of that sweet, sick smell of decay. The wood creaked as I brushed it clean. There was a brass plate on the lid, the name barely legible. Mara Beckett. The same last name Marty mentioned. I pressed my ear against the coffin before I could stop myself. For a moment there was nothing, just silence and the thud of my heartbeat, then a faint sound. A voice, muffled, weak, "Please," I staggered back, hitting the wall. My flashlight flickered. I wanted to scream, to get out, but my body wouldn't listen. The voice came again, louder. "Please, open it." I looked at the coffin, at the half-rotted wood, the brass plate shaking slightly as if something inside was moving. My breath came in short gasps. "No," I whispered. "You're not real." But the coffin lid shifted on its own, just an inch, but enough for a sliver of blackness to appear. Cold air rushed out, bringing with it a scent so rotten it made my stomach twist. I reached for the flashlight, and that's when I saw it. A hand sliding out from the gap, small, pale, fingernails cracked and caked with dirt. It twitched once, then reached toward me. I bolted. I slammed into the door, shoved the lock, and it gave way. I stumbled out into the fog, falling onto the wet grass. Behind me, the mausoleum was silent again. The door creaked slightly as if settling back into place. I ran until my lungs burned. I don't remember getting home. I just remember waking up on my couch with dirt under my nails and mud all over my shoes. The next day I tried to call Marty. His wife answered. Said he hadn't come home the night before. She thought maybe he was pulling a double shift, but no one had seen him since. By evening, the police were at the cemetery. I told them everything. The whispers, the open door, the coffin, the voice. They looked at me like I was losing it. When they checked the mausoleum, it was sealed. Locked tight. No sign of anyone inside. They even opened it just to be sure. Both coffins were there, sealed. No second coffin, no note, no ring. They told me I must have been hallucinating. Stress, lack of sleep, whatever. They sent me home. That night I couldn't stop shaking. I took a shower, sat on my bed, tried to convince myself they were right, that it was all in my head, but around 3 a.m. I heard it again. Soft, close. Eli, I froze. My room was dark except for the streetlight spilling through the blinds. The voice came from the corner. I turned my head slowly. Something was standing there, a woman. Skin pale as dust, hair hanging wet over her face. The same torn dress from the graveyard. Mud dripping from her fingers, pooling on my floor. She tilted her head and I saw her eyes, gray and hollow. But her lips moved, trembling like she was still struggling for air. "You left me," she whispered. "He didn't." My throat tightened. "Who?" Her gaze shifted just slightly, toward the window. I followed it. Outside, standing by the streetlight, was a man, tall, still, even through the glass. I recognized the coat, Marty. He was staring up at my apartment window. His face pale, blank. The woman's voice trembled, softer now. He wouldn't listen. He locked me in. I turned back, but she was gone. The corner was empty. Only the muddy footprints remained. I looked outside again. Marty was gone too. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. At sunrise, I packed a bag and drove 3 towns over. Got a motel room under a fake name. I thought maybe if I put enough distance between me and that place, it would stop. It didn't. Every night since, I've been hearing her voice again. First faint, then clearer. Sometimes it comes from the walls. Sometimes from the mirror. Last night, I woke up to my phone vibrating again, no number. Just unknown caller. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it this morning, I heard 2 voices, hers and Marty's, both whispering the same thing over and over, behind the mausoleum. Behind the mausoleum. I don't know what's waiting for me there now. I don't know if I'll go back, but I can feel it. Whatever she is, whatever happened, it's not done with me. Every time I close my eyes, I see that stone door. And sometimes, if I listen long enough, I can hear fingernails scratching from the other side. The first time I heard them sing, I thought it was the radio. Except my radio wasn't on. It was just past 3 in the morning and I was halfway through another graveyard shift at St. Elora Cemetery. People always joke that it's the quietest job in town, but after a few months of walking those paths alone, quiet starts to feel like pressure. It's not silence, it's weight. That night, fog hung low across the headstones, glowing faintly in the yellow light from the street lamps. My boots made that wet crunch sound on the gravel, and every breath came out white in the cold. Then through the stillness, I heard it, faint, distant singing. At first, it sounded like one voice, soft, high, and far away. But as I stopped and listened, others joined in. 2, then 5, then what sounded like dozens, harmonizing in low, steady tones. It wasn't any song I recognized. No words I could make out. Just this eerie, flowing hum that seemed to move with the fog. I stood there, frozen, the flashlight beam wobbling in my hand. I scanned the cemetery, half expecting to see a group of kids messing around with a speaker. But there was no one. Just rows of stone markers stretching into the dark, and still the singing went on. It wasn't coming from one direction. It felt like it was everywhere, above, behind, beneath my feet. The kind of sound that fills your head instead of your ears. After a minute, I realized something else. The longer I listened, the colder the air got. Not just chilly, numbing cold. I could see frost starting to creep across the metal gate beside me. That's when I turned off the flashlight. I don't know why. Some part of me thought if they couldn't see the light, they wouldn't notice me. The darkness swallowed me whole. But the singing got louder. I backed away slowly, feeling for the path with my boots. My breath came out shaky. I was maybe 20 yards from the chapel when I realized the song had changed. The harmony had shifted, no longer slow and melodic, but choppy like hundreds of voices breathing in sync. Then, one by one, they stopped. The silence that followed was so sudden it felt like my ears popped, and then, from right behind me, a single voice whispered, almost inside my head, "Sing." I spun around, light on, heart hammering, but there was nothing, just fog curling between the graves. That was enough for me. I went straight to the chapel, locked the door, and sat in the tiny maintenance office until sunrise. The next morning, when my supervisor came in, I told him what I heard. He gave me that look people give when they don't want to say you're crazy, said the cemetery had been having problems with vandals playing music late at night, promised he'd check the cameras. There were no cameras. That night I told myself I wouldn't think about it. I'd bring my headphones, listen to a podcast, and get through my shift like normal. But when I got there, the air felt different, heavier. The fog was thicker too. You could barely see 10 feet ahead. Every sound seemed muffled. My footsteps, the jingle of the keys, even the crickets were quiet. I tried to ignore it. I started my rounds, walking the perimeter, flashlight cutting through the mist. When I reached the chapel again, I stopped. The door was cracked open. I knew I'd locked it. I always lock it. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning in the quiet. Inside, the chapel smelled of damp wood and candle wax. The pews were covered in a fine layer of dust that glittered in my light. Everything looked untouched except for one thing. In the front row, there was a single lit candle. It burned low, the flame steady despite the draft from the open door. I walked closer. Next to it was something small and metallic, a cassette tape. Old, unmarked, just sitting there beside the candle. My stomach twisted. I didn't even own a cassette player, but I remembered the small one in the storage closet, the one used to play old hymns during burials. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, maybe. Or the same weird pull I'd felt the night before when I heard the voices. I put the tape in and pressed play. At first, just static, then faintly music, a choir. Dozens of voices blending in perfect harmony. I could almost convince myself it was beautiful. Until the words started. They weren't in English. Not any language I recognized. But the more I listened, the more I felt like I could almost understand them. Like my brain was filling in the blanks. I pressed stop. The music didn't stop. The tape was still. But the singing continued, surrounding me, filling the air. It was louder this time, closer. The candle flame flickered wildly, throwing shadows across the walls that looked like moving figures. My body locked up. I couldn't breathe. My heart thudded so hard it hurt, and through the chorus a single voice rose above the rest. A woman's, soft and clear. "Join us." The sound was so close I could feel the vibration of it in my chest. I dropped the player and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a pew. The music cut off. Silence again. I didn't even shut the door when I left. I just ran. I didn't go back for 2 days. When I did, the candle was gone. So was the tape. But the next night I started hearing them again. It began faintly like before, an echo across the fog. Then louder, until it felt like the entire cemetery was singing. And this time there were words. I still didn't know the language, but I could tell they were chanting something rhythmic, repeating it over and over. I tried calling the police. The dispatcher thought I was pranking them. "Sir, you're hearing singing in a cemetery?" I hung up before she finished laughing. After that, the nights blurred together. The singing came and went, unpredictable. Some nights it was faint, like a dream I could almost shake off. Others it was deafening. Once around 3:15 I saw them. Figures standing in the fog between the rows of graves. Not solid, just shapes, faint outlines. Men and women, heads tilted up, mouths open like they were still singing even though the sound had stopped. I blinked and they were gone. I tried to quit. I really did. But the cemetery's in a small town and jobs are hard to come by. I told myself if I just avoided the chapel I'd be fine. Then Marty, the same Marty who ran the shift at St. Harlan's before he vanished, showed up one night. He looked awful. Pale, hollow-eyed. I didn't even know he'd transferred here. He came to relieve me early, said he wanted to see the grounds again. I asked if he'd heard about what happened at the mausoleum. He nodded once slowly, then looked toward the chapel. "They don't stay buried," he said. "Not here," I laughed it off, nervous. "You mean the vandals?" He shook his head. "You'll see. That was 2 weeks ago." I haven't seen him since. Last night the singing came again, but it sounded different this time, organized. Like a performance, stronger, fuller. And there were more voices, hundreds. The air trembled with it, deep and resonant. My flashlight flickered. Every light in the cemetery seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the song. I don't know what possessed me, but I started recording on my phone. The sound was hypnotic, pulling me toward the chapel. I pushed open the door, and for the first time the candlelight was already burning. Dozens of them now, lining the pews, the altar, the floor, and standing at the front facing me was a woman in a black funeral dress. She didn't move, didn't blink. Just stood there, hands folded, lips moving silently. The singing outside grew louder, blending with a low hum that seemed to come from beneath the ground. My vision wavered, the room spinning slightly. She raised her head and met my eyes. Her lips stopped moving, then she smiled. And in a voice that wasn't a whisper but 1,000 voices speaking through one mouth, she said, "Your turn." I froze. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and wrong. Your turn. The woman in the black dress didn't move again. She just stood there staring, that small smile never breaking. Behind her, the flames from the candles began to tilt, all flickering in the same direction, like the air was shifting around her. I took a shaky step back. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. Her mouth opened slightly, and that's when I realized the sound hadn't stopped. The singing was still there, so faint it was like it was happening inside my skull. It wasn't outside anymore. It was in me. I dropped the flashlight. My hands flew to my ears, but it didn't matter. The song kept going, the same haunting rhythm I'd heard a dozen nights before. Only now I could make out words, syllables that rolled like a language I almost understood. It felt wrong to listen, but impossible to stop. Something warm trickled from my left ear. Blood. My nose, too. I could taste metal in the back of my throat. "Stop," I tried to say, but my voice came out small, strangled. The woman tilted her head as if listening. Then she raised her hand. The candles around the room flared brighter, almost white. The shadows pulled away from her like she was pushing the darkness back. And that's when I saw them. Figures lining the pews. Rows of them. Men, women, children. All sitting perfectly still, eyes closed, mouths slightly open. Their skin looked gray, stretched thin like old paper. They weren't breathing, but they were singing. The sound swelled, filling the chapel with that terrible harmony. It vibrated through the wood, through my chest, through my bones. I stumbled backward, tripping over a pew. When I hit the floor, my phone fell from my pocket, the screen lighting up. I caught a glimpse of the reflection in the black glass. Rows of faces turned toward me, all of them smiling. I scrambled up and ran. I don't remember how I made it to the door, only that when I looked back, the woman in the black dress was standing at the threshold, still smiling, watching me go. Outside, the fog had thickened so much I could barely see the path. The singing followed me out, echoing across the graves, bouncing off the trees. "Your turn," I heard again. But now it wasn't just her voice, it was dozens. Hundreds, maybe thousands, whispering in perfect unison. I sprinted through the fog until I hit the front gate. When I reached my car, I was shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice before getting the door open. I drove until the cemetery disappeared from my rearview mirror, until the first trace of dawn touched the sky. When I finally stopped, I was in the next town over, parked in a gas station lot. I sat there for hours, trying to make sense of what had happened. I played back the audio recording from my phone, the one I'd started before everything went wrong. At first, there was nothing, just wind, static. Then faintly voices, but it wasn't singing. It was whispering, my name, over and over, and then layered beneath it a sound that made my stomach turn. It was me. My own voice humming along. I dropped the phone and threw up in the parking lot. That was 3 nights ago. I quit the job the next morning. Told them I was done, that I didn't care about the paycheck. The manager barely argued. He just looked at me for a long time and said, "You heard them too, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I moved out of town that same day. Thought if I got far enough away the sound would stop, but it hasn't. It's quieter now, sure, but it's still there, just beneath everything. The hum of the fridge, the static on the TV, the wind through the trees. It's all the same pitch. Last night I woke up to it again. Faint singing from somewhere outside my apartment. I tried to ignore it, pulled the pillow over my head, but then my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I didn't answer. When it stopped, I saw a voicemail notification. I sat there staring at it for 10 minutes before pressing play. At first silence, then the faint hum of static, and slowly the singing crept in. Only this time I recognized the voice leading the harmony. Mine. Singing the same strange melody I'd heard that first night. The recording went on for 3 minutes. And then at the very end, a single voice, hers, soft and clear like she was right behind me. Your turn again. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, screen cracking, but the music didn't stop. The sound was coming from inside the apartment now, filling every corner. I could feel it vibrating through the walls, through my skin. My reflection in the dark window flickered like bad reception, mouth twitching in time with the song even though I wasn't moving. I ran to the bathroom, slammed the door, covered my ears, humming just to block it out. But humming only made it worse. It made the melody fit. I don't know how long I sat there. When I finally looked up, there was condensation on the mirror from my breath, and in it, faint letters had appeared, written from the other side of the glass. St. Alora's. Midnight. I smashed the mirror. Now it's almost midnight again. I'm sitting in my car outside the cemetery, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ache. The fog's already thick across the gates. I told myself I'd never come back. But the longer I stay away, the louder the singing gets. It's like it's inside me now, and the only way to make it stop is to finish whatever started that night. The gates creak as I push them open. The air tastes cold and metallic. I can already hear them, faint, distant, carrying on the wind. The same melody, the same rhythm. As I walk down the path toward the chapel, the singing swells. There's light ahead. Candles. The doors are open this time. Inside, the pews are full. The figures are waiting, and at the front she stands again. Black dress, pale face, eyes that seem to see through me. The moment I step inside, the choir stops. The silence hits so hard it feels like my chest caves in. Then she speaks. Now you understand, she says softly. The song never ends, it only needs a voice. I feel something move in my throat. A vibration. The start of a note. I try to swallow it down, but it's already there, pushing its way out. Her eyes glimmer. The candles flare, I open my mouth, and the music pours out of me. It's not mine. It never was. The last thing I remember before everything fades is the sound of the doors closing behind me. The choir begins again, louder this time. And somewhere in that endless harmony, I can hear my own voice joining theirs. Final line. They call it the Midnight Choir because once you start singing, you never stop. The first time I saw the grave move, I thought it was the fog playing tricks on me. It was just after midnight out at Whisper Hill Cemetery, yeah, that's really what it's called, where I'd gone with 2 friends to record for our Real Paranormal podcast. I know, it sounds stupid. 3 college kids with a couple of mics and a night vision camera thinking we'd uncover some ghostly secret. But that night, we found something. We'd been there for an hour, wandering between headstones, whispering jokes to cover up how tense we all were. The fog kept rolling in waves across the field, swallowing everything past a few feet. You could smell wet dirt and old flowers, the kind of scent that sticks to your clothes. I was standing near the older section, where the graves were half sunk and crooked. When I saw it, a low, steady rise in the ground. Just one grave. It looked like the earth itself had taken a deep breath. Did you see that? I whispered. Rory, holding the camera, turned. See what? I pointed. The fog shifted, clearing just enough to see the mound again. The soil moved, slowly but definitely moved. Up, then down, like something beneath was breathing. Rory laughed. It's just the ground settling, chill. But his voice wasn't steady, and I could tell he saw it too. Tessa walked closer. Flashlight beam cutting across the name on the headstone. Eleanor Price. 1942-1970. The earth rose again. This time we all saw it. Rory stepped back. Okay, what the hell? We just stood there watching. The mound swelled once more, then exhaled, a faint hiss escaping the soil like air leaking from a balloon. That sound. It wasn't just air. It was wet, thick, alive. Tessa's flashlight flickered. Is there like gas buildup under the ground? She asked, trying to sound scientific, but her voice trembled. Maybe, I said. Old coffins, decomposition, you know. Then the ground exhaled again. Louder this time, and under it, soft, muffled, was a sound that froze me in place. A whimper, a human whimper. Tessa gasped and dropped her flashlight. The beam rolled across the headstone, lighting up the soil. There was movement again, only faster now. The dirt trembled like something was clawing from beneath. Rory took a step back, camera shaking in his hands. "It's a raccoon," he said. "Or a mole. Something alive down there." But I could tell he didn't believe it. None of us did. The ground heaved once more, and this time we heard it clearly. 3 knocks. Knock, 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 from inside the earth. Tessa screamed. Rory cursed and backed away, pointing the camera at me like I had answers. I swallowed hard. "Maybe there's someone down there. That grave's from the 70s, Rory snapped. "No one's down there," but the sound came again, weaker now. Another set of knocks, then a muffled cry. I dropped to my knees beside the grave. I didn't care about logic or fear or how insane it looked. I started digging. The soil was wet and cold and heavy. My fingers went numb almost instantly, but I kept clawing, dirt flying behind me. "Eli, stop!" Tessa shouted. "You don't know what's—" The ground shuddered beneath me. A puff of air burst through the soil, hitting my face like a sigh. It smelled of rot and metal, and then faintly, "Help!" We all heard it. Rory dropped the camera. It landed lens first in the dirt. Jesus Christ, the voice came again, faint but real. "Help me." Tessa covered her mouth. "No, no, no, no!" I kept digging. My hands hit something hard, a piece of wood. I scraped away more dirt until a small patch of coffin appeared, slick with moisture. I pressed my ear to it, and for a second everything went still. Then thump. From the inside, I jerked back, heart hammering. "She's alive." "That's impossible," Rory hissed. "You're losing it, man. She's been dead for 50 years. The thump came again. Rory started shaking his head. "We're leaving, now." Tessa didn't move. She was staring at the grave, whispering something to herself. Like a prayer. I grabbed the crowbar from our gear bag. We'd brought it to open an old shed for spooky ambiance. My hands were slick with mud as I jammed it into the coffin seam. Another breath of air hissed out. Colder than before. The smell was unbearable now. Rot, damp wood, and something sweet like flowers left to die in a vase. I pried harder. The lid cracked. "Stop!" Rory shouted. "Stop it, Eli!" But I had to know. The lid gave way with a soft groan. A thin layer of dirt slid into the coffin, and for a moment I saw nothing. Just darkness. Then 2 pale fingers poked through the soil from below. I screamed. They were small, delicate, like a woman's hand, but wrong somehow. The skin was gray and papery, the nails splintered and black. The fingers twitched once, then curled like they were reaching for me. Rory bolted. He didn't even grab the camera. Just ran. Tessa stood frozen, eyes wide, whispering, "She's moving. She's moving." I backed away as the fingers pushed higher, followed by a hand, then a wrist. The dirt shifted, collapsing inward. There was another breath, deep and wet, like lungs struggling to fill after decades without air. The hand stopped moving. Everything went still. The silence was so heavy, it felt like sound itself had died. I realized I was shaking all over. Then Tessa screamed. The hand wasn't reaching up anymore. It was reaching out, right toward her. She stumbled back, tripping over a broken headstone, hitting the ground hard. The hand twitched again, the fingers dragging small trails in the mud toward her. I ran to her, grabbed her arm, pulled her up. "Run!" We didn't look back. We sprinted through the cemetery, the fog swallowing the graves behind us. I could still hear the faint rustle of dirt moving somewhere out there. By the time we reached the gate, Rory was gone. His car, the camera, everything. Tessa collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "She was breathing," she kept saying. It was breathing. I looked back one last time. Through the fog, I thought I saw the mound of dirt shift again. Not rising or falling this time, just opening. Like something inside had finally taken its first breath in 50 years. We didn't talk on the drive home. The silence sat heavy in the car like a fourth person breathing between us. Tessa kept wiping at her face, whispering over and over. She grabbed for me. I tried to tell her she was in shock, that we must have seen gas decay, some freak collapse, but I couldn't make myself believe it, not after what I'd heard through the coffin. That voice, that breath. When I finally got back to my apartment, I scrubbed the dirt from under my nails until my fingers bled. The smell wouldn't come off. That sickly sweet rot lingered, clinging to my skin, my clothes, even my pillowcase. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hand twitching up through the dirt. By morning, Rory still hadn't called. His phone went straight to voicemail. Tessa texted me around noon. The grave's open. I didn't respond. I didn't want to know what she meant. But 2 hours later, she called, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Eli, it's empty," she whispered. "The coffin, it's empty." I told her to get out of there. "Go home, lock her doors." But she just kept saying she couldn't breathe, that the air felt heavy like something was pressing against her chest. Then the call cut out. I tried calling back, nothing. That night I drove back to Whisper Hill. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd find proof it was all some twisted trick of the mind. Maybe I just needed to see it again to believe it. The fog was thicker than before. I parked outside the gate and walked in with just a flashlight and my phone. The beam of light bounced off the mist like a solid wall. When I reached Eleanor Price's grave, my stomach dropped. The hole was open, a black wound in the ground. The coffin lid was split in half, the wood splintered and wet. There were drag marks in the dirt leading away from the grave toward the older section of the cemetery. I followed them. Every instinct screamed to turn around, but my feet kept moving. The tracks wound between headstones until they stopped at a mausoleum near the hill's edge. The door was cracked open, a faint sound coming from inside. Breathing, slow, rhythmic, wet. I raised the flashlight. The beam caught something pale in the darkness. Movement. A shape curled in the far corner. "Rory?" I called out, voice trembling. The shape twitched. Then a whisper so soft I almost missed it. "Eli." My stomach turned to ice. The figure stood up. It was Rory, or what was left of him. His face was gray, sunken, eyes bloodshot and unfocused. Dirt clung to his hair, packed under his fingernails. He was breathing hard like someone who'd run a marathon. "Rory, what happened to you?" He looked at me, and when he spoke, his voice didn't sound like his anymore. It came in layers. His tone mixed with something higher, whispery, like a woman's voice echoing inside his chest. "She needed air," he said.
So I gave her mine. I stumbled back, shaking my head.
"We're leaving, man. We'll get help." He stepped closer. The smell hit me, that same sweet rot from the grave. "She's not done yet," he murmured. "She's still hungry." Then from the darkness behind him came another sound. A breath, long, deep, dragging, a shape moved. At first I thought it was shadow, but then my flashlight hit skin. Gray, slick, half covered in dirt. A woman, or what used to be one. Her hair hung in wet strands over her face. Her eyes were clouded white, but they locked onto me with a desperate, starving kind of need. Eleanor Price. She exhaled, and the air hit me like cold fog. My flashlight flickered. Rory turned toward her, smiling like a worshiper before a god. "Breathe," he whispered. She opened her mouth, and the sound that came out wasn't human. It was a sigh and a scream at once, like every bit of air in the world was being sucked toward her. I couldn't breathe. The pressure in my chest built until my ribs felt like they'd snap. I dropped the flashlight, clawing at my throat, gasping. The air around us spun, the fog pulling into the mausoleum like a whirlpool. Rory dropped to his knees beside her, still smiling as his chest caved inward. She was taking his breath, literally pulling the air out of him. I tried to crawl away, but my vision blurred. My ears rang. Then I felt it, her breath hitting my face. Cold, heavy. It forced its way into my mouth, down my throat, filling my lungs with something wrong. When I came to, it was dawn. I was lying outside the mausoleum, mud in my mouth, lungs burning. The door stood open. Inside, no Rory, no Eleanor. Just the broken coffin lid dragged halfway across the stone floor. I stumbled out of the cemetery, not even looking back. That was 4 days ago. Since then, every time I fall asleep, I wake up gasping. My chest feels like it's moving on its own, like something inside me is breathing for me, and the smell, that sweet rotting flower smell, it's in my apartment now. I tried scrubbing everything, opening windows. It doesn't go away. Last night I woke up to the sound of whispering under my bed, just faint words carried on slow breaths. I leaned down, shaking, and heard her voice, and soft, rasping, wet. You gave me air. Now give me life. The mattress shifted. My chest tightened again. This morning I found dirt under my fingernails. Not dust and wet soil. I don't remember going anywhere. But when I checked my phone, there was a new recording. I must have hit record while I was asleep. I played it back. At first, it was just breathing, slow, uneven. Then faintly, a woman's voice went right next to the mic. You can't hold your breath forever. The recording ended with the sound of soil moving. I don't think she ever left that grave. I think she just moved in me. Every breath I take now feels shared, borrowed. Like any second, she'll take it back. It's getting harder to breathe tonight. My chest feels heavier. I can hear her humming through the air vent. I don't know if I'll wake up tomorrow. But if someone finds this recording, don't go to Whisper Hill. Don't stand near Eleanor Price's grave. The dirt might look still, but if you wait long enough, you'll see it rise. Final line. Some graves don't keep the dead in. They keep the living breathing for them. I used to think graveyard shifts were just a figure of speech, but that was before I took the actual graveyard shift at Hollow Pine Cemetery. It was an easy job. At first, keep the gates locked, make sure no one vandalized headstones, chase off the occasional teenager with beer and bad ideas. I'd bring a thermos of coffee, sit in the old caretaker's shed with my radio and wait for dawn. But a few weeks ago, I started hearing them. The voices from Plot 67. It was a small section near the back fence, mostly old graves, sunken and moss-covered. I never had a reason to go there until one night around 3 a.m., when I caught movement on the security cam, a flicker of light where there shouldn't have been any. I figured it was kids again. Grabbed my flashlight and headed out. The fog was thick that night, dense enough that my own breath looked like smoke. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under my boots. When I reached the edge of Plot 67, the air went cold. Not the kind of chill that runs along your skin. Deeper, like it sank right into my bones. I swept the flashlight across the graves. No one there. Just a row of tilted headstones and a single lantern flickering weakly beside one of them. I didn't remember any lantern being there. I crouched beside it, ready to pick it up, and that's when I heard it, a voice, faint, muffled, beneath me. Hello? I froze. At first I thought it was the wind moving through the ground, but then it came again, clearer, pleading. Is anyone there? My stomach dropped. It was a woman's voice. Close. Too close. I took a step back, the flashlight trembling in my hand. I aimed it at the grave the lantern sat beside. The name was so worn I had to trace it with my fingers to make it out. Marianne Cole, 1966, 1988. The dirt beneath the stone shifted. I heard the voice again, more desperate now. Please help me! My brain scrambled for logic. A prank, a speaker buried in the ground, somebody trying to scare me. But there were no wires, no footprints. Just fog and the steady hiss of my own breath. Then another voice joined in, deeper, rasping, male. Don't answer her. I spun around. No one there. The fog swallowed the path behind me. The lantern flickered harder, flame bending as if pushed by a breath. Who's there? I yelled, no reply. Just a sound like someone shifting dirt with their hands. And then both voices spoke. Together this time, from the same patch of ground. We're still here. I ran. Didn't even look back. I didn't stop until I reached the shed, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the flashlight twice, trying to turn it off. For the rest of the night, the radios crackled with static. Once, between bursts of white noise, I swore I heard a whisper. Plot 67, by morning. I convinced myself it was exhaustion, hallucinations, the mind playing tricks on a tired man surrounded by graves. But when I went out the next afternoon, the lantern was gone. No trace of it. The ground where it had been looked freshly disturbed. A faint depression like something had sunk just below the surface. That night, I told myself I wouldn't go near Plot 67 again. I stayed inside the shed, volume up on the radio, eyes on the monitors. Around 2:47 a.m., the feed for camera 3 flickered. That was the one aimed at the back fence, right where the voices had come from, static. Then a figure. At first I thought it was a trick of the fog, but as the picture cleared I saw her, a woman standing at the edge of the graves. Pale, barefoot, wearing what looked like a white nightgown, her head tilted toward the ground like she was listening to something beneath her feet. The timestamp froze on the screen for a second. Then the video skipped, and suddenly she was looking right at the camera. I jumped up, heart pounding, the air in the shed feeling too thin. The lights flickered once and went out. The only glow came from the monitor, and she was still there, still staring. Then from the speaker I heard a faint whisper, layered under the static. "We're waiting for you, Thomas." My full name. No one outside that job knew I worked the night shift at Hollow Pines. I yanked the power cord, killing the feed. The monitor went black, but the whisper didn't stop. It was coming from behind me. I turned, flashlight trembling. The door of the shed creaked open on its own, hinges crying in protest. Cold air rolled in, carrying the faintest echo like voices drifting through the fog. Plot 67. "Come listen." I shut the door, locked it again, and sat in the corner with my back to the wall until dawn. When my boss came in that morning, I handed him my keys and said I was done. He didn't argue, just gave me a look, something between pity and fear. As I turned to leave, he said quietly, "They don't like it when you stop listening." I thought he was joking. But later that day, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled up the cemetery records online, searching for Mary Ann Cole. There was nothing. No burial record, no death certificate. Plot 67 wasn't even on the current site map. It was listed as retired, meaning, officially, it doesn't exist. I didn't go back to Hollow Pines for 3 days. I told myself I wouldn't, that I was done, that the job wasn't worth it. But the thing is, once you hear voices like that, voices coming from beneath the ground, you can't just walk away. They follow you. By the 4th night, I was hearing them again, not outside, inside. It started as static in the vents, then faint words between the hum of the fridge, the rush of water in the pipes. Always the same whisper, Plot 67. "Come listen." It got louder when I tried to sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I'd see the woman from the camera feed, Mary Ann, standing in that white gown, her head tilted toward the dirt. I'd wake up gasping, half convinced I could taste soil in my mouth. By the 5th day, I cracked. I needed to see for myself that it wasn't real, that there was some rational explanation, so I drove back out there. The gates were locked, but the chain was old, easy to pry open. The night was windless, the fog pressed low to the ground. Even the crickets were silent. I walked straight to the back fence. The flashlight beam caught the familiar shape of the tilted headstones. Plot 67 looked exactly the same, except now there were 7 fresh lanterns. Each one burned with a steady orange flame, lined perfectly along the graves, and in the center of them something was carved into the ground. A circle, maybe 3 feet wide, made from broken shards of marble and bits of bone. I felt every instinct screaming to leave, but the air had that same deep cold again, the kind that sinks right behind your ribs. Then I heard it. "Thomas." I spun. A woman stood just beyond the lantern light, barefoot in that same nightgown, skin pale as wax. "Mary Ann?" I whispered. She smiled. Small. Sad. The kind of smile that doesn't belong to the living. "You heard us. What are you?" She stepped closer, her feet silent on the dirt. "You came to listen. That's all we ever wanted." My mouth went dry. "Who's we?" She looked back at the circle, and for the first time I noticed movement there. Shapes shifting under the soil, pressing upward like the ground itself was breathing. Her voice softened, almost a lullaby. "They just want someone to remember, someone to keep the silence away." Something pushed up from beneath the circle, a hand gray and slick, fingers flexing weakly before sinking again. I stumbled backward. "What the hell?" Mary Ann tilted her head, eyes glinting in the lantern light. "They're cold down there, forgotten. Buried twice, once in dirt, once in memory." Then she looked at me. "You can help them breathe." My flashlight flickered, and that's when I heard them. Dozens of voices, all whispering at once, overlapping and echoing through the fog. Male, female, young, old, each one gasping out fragments of words, please, names, cries, still here. "It's dark. Can you hear us?" "Please." The air trembled with sound. I could feel their breath icy against my skin. "Make it stop," I begged. "Please, make it stop." Mary Ann just stepped closer. The lanterns flared brighter, casting long, thin shadows across her face. Her eyes were hollow pits now, but I could still see something moving behind them. "Once you've heard us," she whispered, "you belong to us." Then the ground erupted. Hands, dozens of them, shot up through the soil, clawing and grasping, dragging at my boots. I kicked and tore free, sprinting toward the fence, the voices rising into a deafening chorus behind me. "Don't leave us. Listen. Listen." I didn't stop running until I hit the road. My chest burned, my lungs raw with cold. When I looked back, the lanterns were still burning. 7 perfect points of light, and in their glow, I saw Marianne standing at the edge of the graves. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her mouth was wide open, jaw distended as if she was screaming, but no sound came out. The next morning, I drove straight to the local records office. The clerk there, an old man with trembling hands, hesitated when I asked about Plot 67. He finally sighed. "That section's been sealed off for 30 years, he said. "Ground collapse. They moved the bodies, or tried to. Tried to?" He looked at me with tired eyes. "They stopped digging when they found the caretaker down there. Said he'd been buried alive. They never figured out how." I didn't say another word. That night I packed up everything, quit my apartment, left town. But no matter where I go, the voices follow. They don't come all at once now, just small things. Static in the car radio that whispers my name. The faint hum in an air vent that sounds like someone breathing. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear Marianne. Soft, patient, waiting. A few nights ago, I found something wedged under my door. A small brass lantern, old, rusted. Inside, a slip of paper burned around the edges. 4 words written in ash-gray ink. "You forgot to listen. I don't sleep much anymore." The air feels wrong, too heavy, like it's pressing against my ribs from the inside. Sometimes I catch myself whispering back into the dark. Words I don't understand. Names I've never heard. I think that's how it starts, when their voices finally become yours. Last night I woke up standing outside, barefoot, mud up to my ankles. The scent of wet soil in my hair. There was a new bruise on my chest, round and dark like a thumbprint. And under my nails, dirt. I can still hear them tonight. Even as I write this, they're closer now. They keep saying the same thing over and over, almost gentle. "It's your shift again." And I know what they mean. They want me back at Hollow Pines, back at Plot 67, back to listen. Because once you hear the dead, silence feels like suffocating. Final line. And somewhere out there, the graves are still breathing, waiting for the next voice to answer back. I used to think grief made people hear things. Now I know that's not true. I worked maintenance at Greenwood Memorial Cemetery out by Route 6, in a quiet place mostly forgotten, big enough to get lost in, small enough that I used to know every headstone by heart. Then I met him. We called him the man who talked to headstones. I first saw him last February early morning when frost still clung to the grass like dusted glass. He was kneeling beside an old marble grave, one of the 1930s plots that hardly anyone visits. I remember thinking it was strange because he wasn't praying. He was whispering. I was raking leaves a few yards away, and I swear I heard him say, "It's okay. You can rest now." His tone wasn't soft or mournful. It was steady, like someone giving directions. When he noticed me, he smiled politely, stood up, brushed off his coat, and nodded before walking toward the gate. No flowers, no tears, just calm. Later, I mentioned it to Carl, the senior groundskeeper. He stopped what he was doing and gave me this odd look. "You saw him too? What do you mean?" He shrugged like he didn't want to say too much. "He comes every few years. Different graves, same whispering. Says he's helping them move on." "Helping them?" I asked. Carl lit a cigarette, stared out toward the western section of the cemetery. "You ever hear the saying, the dead don't rest easy? He's the reason we stopped asking why." I laughed it off. But that night, lying in bed, the image of that man kneeling beside the grave wouldn't leave me. The way he leaned in close, like he was listening to something whispering back. 2 nights later, I saw him again. It was late, maybe 1:30 a.m. I'd stayed behind after a storm to check for damage. Most of the cemetery lights were out. My flashlight beam cut through the fog, tracing shadows across the stones. Then I heard it. A faint voice ahead, rhythmic and calm. I followed the sound to the far end of the cemetery near the line of birch trees. The man was there again, kneeling in front of another grave, one hand resting flat against the stone. the other gently patting the dirt. He didn't flinch when my light hit him. "Sir?" I called out, my voice echoing strangely through the fog. "Cemetery's closed. You can't be here after hours." He turned his head slowly, his eyes catching the light, gray, unfocused, like someone deep in thought. "I was just finishing," he said softly. His voice was calm, too calm. She was having trouble letting go. I hesitated. "Who?" He looked back at the stone. "Her name's Anna. She didn't like the dark." The grave he was kneeling beside was cracked down the middle, half covered in ivy. I brushed some of it aside and read the name. Anna Corwin, 1898-1902, a child's grave. Before I could speak again, he stood, tucking something into his coat pocket. It looked like a small stone, not from the ground, though. Smooth, polished, almost translucent. "She's quiet now," he said, giving me that same polite smile. "It's better when they stop talking." I swallowed. "What do you mean by that?" He didn't answer. He just walked past me, boots crunching softly over gravel. I watched him go, frozen until he disappeared into the fog. I didn't tell Carl that time. I didn't tell anyone. But the next morning, when I went to check the grave, the soil looked disturbed, freshly turned, like someone had dug there recently and refilled it. That night, I started hearing whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind against the windows. Then it got clearer, voices low and overlapping coming from the walls. They didn't make sense at first. Fragments of phrases, names, a soft crying sound. I left every light in my apartment on. I didn't sleep. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove back to the cemetery just before dawn, desperate to prove to myself it wasn't real. The fog was thick again. It always was around then, like it never fully left. When I reached Anna's grave, the soil looked untouched this time. No footprints. No signs of anyone. But when I crouched down, I felt something cold move through the air, like breath. "Please," a faint voice said. I froze. It came from the ground. I stood up so fast I dropped the flashlight. The beam hit the dirt, shaking slightly as it rolled. "Please," the voice said again. Softer now. He took her name. My chest tightened. "Who?" I whispered. The ground didn't move. The fog didn't shift. But the voice came again. Right behind me this time, the man who talks to headstones. I spun around, but no one was there. When I turned back, my flashlight flickered out. In the dark, I heard a slow scraping sound, like fingernails dragging through soil. Then, silence. I grabbed the flashlight, sprinted for the gate, didn't stop until I was back in my truck with the doors locked and my heart trying to crawl out of my chest. I didn't go back for 2 days. When I did, I found Carl's truck parked near the maintenance shed. His thermos sat on the hood, lid off, steam still rising. I called out for him, but the cemetery was silent. Then I saw footprints. His boots, trailing toward the birch trees. I followed them, calling his name until I reached the old section again. Plot 42. The same row where I'd last seen that man. Carl was there, kneeling beside a grave. His hand rested flat on the stone, his lips moving slowly, like he was repeating something under his breath. "Carl," I said, approaching carefully. He didn't look up. "Carl, what are you doing?" He whispered one more phrase I couldn't make out, then slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes were blank, unfocused, and his voice sounded distant, hollow. "He taught me how to listen," he said. "What?" Carl blinked once, slowly. "They talk all the time. You just have to know how to answer." He stood and stepped back. I looked down at the grave he'd been touching. The name carved into the stone wasn't weathered at all. It looked freshly etched. Carl Dempsey. '58, 2024. My stomach dropped. "Carl," I whispered. "What the hell is this?" But when I looked up, he was gone. I stood there staring at that headstone until the sun began to creep over the tree line, painting the fog a dull orange. Carl's name was carved deep, like it had been there for years. But it couldn't have been. I'd seen him only seconds ago. I touched the stone. It was cold. Too cold. My hand came away wet, smeared with something dark and sticky that smelled like metal. I stepped back fast, heart pounding so hard it hurt, and then I heard it. The faintest whisper just under my breath. "He's listening now." I turned in a full circle, flashlight trembling in my grip. The fog was thicker than ever, swirling like smoke. Somewhere in it I saw movement, a figure walking slowly between the rows. The man, same long coat, same careful stride. He stopped about 20 feet away, hands folded in front of him. I told him to stop digging, he said softly, but they never listened the first time. What did you do to him? My voice cracked. He tilted his head as if the question confused him. Carl wanted to help. They all do. But when you hear the dead for long enough, their silence starts to feel cruel. I took a step back. You need to leave. He smiled gently. Leave? Oh no. I don't stay here, not really. I only come when they can't rest. What are you talking about? He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out one of those smooth, translucent stones. In the morning light, I could see faint shadows swirling inside it, like smoke trapped under glass. They whisper until someone listens, he said. Once they're heard, they quiet. I keep their voices here. He held up the stone between two fingers. It's a kindness. You're sick, I said. He nodded slowly. Maybe, but you heard them too, didn't you? I didn't answer, but he must have seen it in my face. His smile widened. Then you know how heavy their words can be. The air thickens with them. It's hard to breathe after a while. He walked toward me and I stepped back again. My heel hit a loose patch of earth and I stumbled, falling against another headstone. This one was new. Shiny Granite Thomas Hale, 1992-2024. That was my name. I froze. The man crouched beside me, lowering his voice like a parent soothing a frightened child. Don't be afraid. It doesn't hurt if you stop fighting. Stay away from me, I hissed, but he kept talking, calm and steady. You've already been chosen, you know. They've been calling you since the night you heard Anna's grave. He pressed the stone into my hand. It was warm now, pulsing faintly like something alive. The moment it touched my skin, I heard them. Dozens of voices. Hundreds, maybe. All speaking at once, whispering, begging, screaming, Thomas, help us. He promised rest. We can't breathe. We can't. I dropped the stone, but the sound didn't stop. It filled the air, vibrating through my bones. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the voices just grew louder. The man's lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, then suddenly, silence. Utter, crushing silence. He looked down at me, his expression almost kind. It's easier when they sleep. I scrambled up, ready to run, but my legs felt heavy, like the air itself was pulling at me. The world around me seemed to pulse with a low hum, the kind you feel in your teeth. You don't have to run, he said. Just listen. I don't want to hear them. I shouted. He smiled, eyes flickering gray. Then you already are one of us. The fog behind him rippled. For a moment I saw silhouettes. People standing in rows, their faces hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. He turned and gestured toward them. They all tried to ignore the voices too, but the dead don't like being forgotten. The air grew colder. My breath came out in short, shallow bursts. My body felt light, unsteady, like gravity had stopped working properly. I'm not staying here, I said, backing away. He nodded, almost regretful. They all say that. I bolted. I ran through the fog, past rows of stones and leaning crosses, my boots slamming against the frozen ground. The air around me felt thick, syrupy, like I was wading through something invisible. Behind me, I could hear him walking, not running, just steady. Calm footsteps, tap-a-tap-a-tap. Every time my flashlight beam hit another stone, I saw new names. Familiar ones. Carl's my father's, my own. The path twisted, but somehow it always led me back toward the same place. That cracked child's grave. Anna Corwin. The dirt above it was moving again. I dropped to my knees before I even realized what I was doing. The soil shifted like something underneath was trying to breathe. A faint voice rose from the earth. He took my name. Give it back. My throat closed. I don't have it. But even as I said it, I felt something burning in my hand. I opened my fist. The stone was there again, glowing faintly from within. I didn't remember picking it up. Anna's voice grew stronger, clearer. Give it back. The man's voice came from behind me, low and calm. If you give it back, she'll stop whispering. But another will start. I turned. He was standing at the edge of the fog, eyes reflecting pale light. Every listener must pass the voices on. That's how they rest. The ground beneath me pulsed once, twice, then a small hand, gray, fragile, broke through the soil and grabbed my wrist. I screamed and yanked back, but it held tight. cold fingers digging into my skin. The stone in my palm flared blinding white, and then everything went dark. When I woke, I was lying on the grass. The sun was high, warm against my face. Birds were chirping. For a second, it felt normal again, until I looked around. The cemetery was empty. No fog, no footprints, no sign of the man. I checked my phone. It was 3 days later. I stumbled toward the maintenance shed, dizzy and disoriented. Carl's truck was gone. My tools were stacked neatly inside like nothing had happened. But when I looked in the mirror above the sink, I froze. There was dirt under my fingernails. And carved faintly into the skin of my wrist, just below the thumb, were 3 small letters. AC, I don't remember carving them. That night, I tried to sleep. The whispering started again, soft, steady, just under the hum of the refrigerator. Only one voice this time. A child's. You hear me, don't you? I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. It's your turn to listen. Now I go back to Greenwood every night. I don't even know why. My feet just take me there. Sometimes when I walk between the rows, I catch glimpses of him. The man with the gray eyes and standing far away watching. I never approach him. I don't have to, because I've started doing what he did. When the whispering gets too loud, I kneel beside a grave, place my palm against the stone, and listen until it stops. And when the quiet finally comes, I leave a small, smooth stone behind him the same way he did. I think I understand now. It isn't about hearing the dead. It's about making room for them. Every voice needs somewhere to go. I first heard the voices through the maintenance radio. It was around 2 a.m., and I was sitting in the caretaker's shack at Willow Grove Cemetery, half asleep, trying to stay warm beside the little space heater that barely worked. I'd been working night security there for 6 months, an easy gig, or it was supposed to be. But that night, the static started. The radio we used was one of those old two-way sets that buzzed constantly, picking up truckers, nearby dispatch, sometimes even weather broadcasts. But this was different. The static pulsed. It came in rhythm. Long, short, long, like breathing. I thought maybe it was interference, so I turned the dial a little. The noise stopped, then came back sharper. Beneath it, faint as a sigh, a voice whispered something I couldn't make out. I leaned closer. Don't move. I jerked back so hard the chair tipped. The voice was clear, a woman's, calm, close, like she was right behind the microphone. I froze. The shack was silent except for the faint hum of the heater. I looked outside through the dusty window, rows of headstones fading into fog. Nothing moved. Carl? I said into the radio, hoping it was one of the other guards messing around. That you? No reply. Just static, then softer. You can hear me now. I switched the radio off immediately. The static kept going. That's when I realized it wasn't the radio anymore. It was the air. The same dull hiss, the same uneven rhythm, like it had bled into the room itself. I packed up and left early that night. Told myself I was just overtired. The next shift, I brought a different radio. Brand new, straight out of the box. Around midnight, the same thing started again. Faint static creeping through even before I turned the volume up. And then the voice came back. Why did you leave? My throat went dry. Who is this? No answer. The static built again, louder, the hiss turning into a crackling pulse that made my ears ache. I switched channels, but it followed me, the same breathing rhythm. You shouldn't have left me in the dark. That's when I realized it wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was underneath it, like the sound was bleeding through from somewhere below me. I stepped outside. The fog was thick again. It always rolled in around midnight at Willow Grove. The floodlights cut through in weak cones, barely touching the rows of stones. The sound was louder now. I followed it across the grass, past the old mausoleum, down toward the maintenance shed. The hiss turned into a low hum, rising and falling like someone breathing through static. It led me straight to the small stone building where we kept the backup generator. The radio hissed harder the closer I got, and for a second I thought maybe that was it. Just interference from the generator. But then I noticed the door was open. Inside, the light was flickering. The air smelled metallic like burnt wires and cold soil, and right there on the concrete floor beside the generator was another radio, one of the older ones, long dead. Its speaker was glowing faintly red like an ember. I picked it up. It was ice cold. "Don't touch that," a voice said behind me. I nearly dropped it. It was Greg, the day caretaker. 60 years old, face like old bark. He looked pale under the flickering light. "You shouldn't mess with that one," he said quietly. "What the hell is it doing out here?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared at the radio like it might wake up. "That belonged to the old groundsman. Before you. Before me, even. What happened to him?" Greg hesitated. "He used to keep the radio on at night, just like you. Said it helped him stay awake. Then one winter he stopped answering calls. We found him in the shack, still holding the radio. What killed him?" Greg looked at me like he wasn't sure I'd believe him. "They said heart attack." But I saw the look on his face. He was listening to something. He took the radio gently from my hands, turned the dial to static, and set it on the ground. "If it talks again, you turn it off and walk away." "Got it," I nodded. But later that night I couldn't stop thinking about it. So of course I went back. I waited until after 2 when the fog had thickened and the crickets stopped chirping. I crept into the generator shed and sat down beside that dead radio. At first nothing happened. Just silence. Then the faint hiss came again, softer than before. "You came back." The voice was clearer this time. Female. Mid-30s maybe. Gentle but wrong, like someone trying to remember how to sound human. "Who are you?" I whispered. "You hear us now?" "Us?" The radio crackled violently, the light under it flaring bright white. For half a second I heard multiple voices overlapping. Men, women, children, all whispering at once. Then, silence. The floodlight outside flickered, and I realized something. The generator wasn't running. The light shouldn't even be on. That's when I noticed the temperature had dropped. My breath came out in fog. The hair on my arms stood up. "Static keeps us warm," the voice said. "What do you want from me?" "Just to be heard." The speaker popped. Then the static died completely. I stood up fast, flashlight shaking in my hand. The radio looked dead again, like it had never turned on. I started for the door, and then, faintly from the other end of the shed, another voice whispered back, "He's one of them now." The next morning, Greg didn't show up for work. I found his truck still in the lot, door open, keys in the ignition. The radio inside was still on, tuned to a dead channel. When I picked up the receiver, the static pulsed 3 times. Long, short, long breathing. I haven't told anyone this, but I think the static isn't just noise. I think it's a signal. I've started noticing it in other places, in the buzz of power lines, the hum of the refrigerator, even the way the TV flickers when I walk past. It's everywhere now, and sometimes if I listen long enough, I can make out words. Not always full sentences, just fragments, cold. "Below. Stay tuned." Last night I woke up to the sound of my handheld radio hissing from across the room. I hadn't touched it since the night in the shed. It sat upright on the dresser, light glowing faintly red again. "We never left," the voice said. I unplugged it. The hiss didn't stop. I threw it in the closet and buried it under clothes. But even through the door I could still hear it. Faint, rhythmic, breathing static. Today I went back to the cemetery to tell management I'm quitting. Greg's nameplate was still on his locker, but when I opened it, the inside was covered with radio parts, cords, batteries, speakers, all tangled together in a mess of black wire. And in the center sat one of those smooth, translucent stones. It pulsed faintly in sync with the sound of static in my head. I left right then. I tried to drive home, but halfway down the road, every station on my car radio turned to the same hiss. Then a voice, calm and low, came through the speakers. "Don't turn it off." The car stalled. The lights flickered. I sat there, frozen. While the static rose like a wave, I could hear them all. The same voices, the same breath between every burst of white noise. They weren't angry. They were waiting. And I finally understood what Greg meant when he said the dead don't sleep. They just hum in the frequency no one listens to anymore. Now the static never leaves. It follows me into every room. It hides in the silence between heartbeats. Sometimes it even answers. Like right now, the radio across from me just turned on by itself. The light's red again. The air smells like cold dirt. The voice comes through softly, almost tender. "Keep listening. You're one of us now." The first time I heard the crying, I thought it was a cat. It was late, close to 3 a.m., and I was doing my usual patrol through the west section of Fair Hill Cemetery. That's the oldest part. where the headstones lean at crooked angles and most of the names have been worn down by rain. The fog was thick enough that night to swallow sound, but somehow the crying slipped right through. It was soft, high-pitched, a child's cry. At first, I ignored it. Cemeteries make strange noises when it's cold. Trees creak, stone shifts, animals get trapped in the brush. But then it came again. Closer this time. Help me. I froze. The voice was faint but distinct, echoing from somewhere past the angel statue, the one that stands near the hill overlooking Section D. Everyone in town knows that statue. Wings spread wide, hands reaching down toward the ground like it's comforting something buried beneath. Locals call it the mourning angel. I tightened my coat and walked toward it, flashlight beam slicing through the mist. The closer I got, the stronger the smell of damp earth became. Please. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal. It was a voice, and a child's, coming from the base of the statue. I knelt down, running the flashlight across the ground. The grass was soaked and black with rain. There was a small plaque there, half buried in dirt. Eleanor Grace Whitby, 1909-1915. Beloved daughter. Forever in the light. The crying stopped. The silence afterward was heavy, like the air itself had weight. Then, just as I leaned closer, I heard a whisper right against my ear. She's still here. I spun around, but no one was there. My radio crackled suddenly, just a burst of static, no voice, and then went dead. The battery shouldn't have died that fast. The air was colder now, my breath turning thick and white. I looked back at the statue, and for a second I could have sworn its head had turned slightly toward me. I told myself I was imagining it. Sleep deprivation, nerves, whatever. I left early that night. Didn't even finish the round. But the next night it started again. The crying. Only this time it began as soon as I stepped through the gate. It followed me through the paths, always distant, never far. And every time I passed the angel, it got louder. I stopped at the statue again, heart pounding, and called out, "Who's there?" The crying stopped. Then a new sound, soft scraping like nails dragging through dirt. My flashlight flickered. Something was moving beneath the angel's base. The soil shifted in small pulses like something breathing under the earth. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a root. Then I saw it, a small hand pressing up through the dirt. Gray. Still. Tiny. My heart nearly stopped. I blinked and it was gone. Just soil again. I left the flashlight behind and ran all the way to my car. The next morning I went back in daylight. The statue looked normal. No disturbed ground, no sign of a handprint, no sound. I almost convinced myself I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Then I saw the toy, a small porcelain doll half buried beside the base. Old-fashioned, the kind that had glass eyes and a cracked smile. Its dress was faded blue, its hair matted with mud. It hadn't been there before. There was something scratched into its porcelain arm. 5 shaky letters. Help me. I showed it to my supervisor, Paul. He laughed it off, said probably some kid sneaking in after dark, told me to quit letting the ghosts get in my head. That night I left the doll in the office. I didn't even want to be near it. But sometime around 2 a.m. the crying came again. Only this time it was coming from inside the office. I ran back from the main path, flashlight shaking in my hand. Through the window I saw movement, the doll, sitting upright on the desk, and beside it the radio turned on by itself, crackling faintly with static. A whisper came through the speaker. You took her away. The lights flickered. I backed away, tripping over the threshold as the radio's volume climbed higher. The static twisted into something that almost sounded like breathing. Then the crying started again, but louder, layered, echoing from outside and through the radio at once. I slammed the door shut and took off across the field. The fog was so thick I couldn't see more than 10 feet. Ahead, I didn't even realize I was running toward the angel until I saw it appear out of the gray. Something had changed. The base of the statue was cracked open. A long, narrow split ran straight through the middle like the ground itself had given way. The crying came from inside that gap, soft and broken, like it was trying to push its way out. It's so dark. I crouched down, hand trembling as I reached toward the crack. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, guilt, something deeper. My fingers brushed cold stone, then something softer. Flesh. Small. Cold. I yanked my hand back so fast I scraped my knuckles on the statue's edge. A child's voice. Right behind me now, don't leave me again. I turned, no one there. Just fog and gravestones fading into nothing. But when I looked back at the angel, the face had changed. The eyes were open, no longer looking down in sorrow. They were looking at me. I stumbled backward, heart hammering so hard it made my vision blur. The air around the statue shimmered, heat and cold colliding in waves. Then I heard footsteps and small, quick circling me. She said you'd come back. Who? I whispered. Eleanor. The name echoed across the graves, overlapping until it didn't sound like a name anymore. Just a wail stretched thin across the fog. I ran. I didn't even care where. Just away. I didn't go back for 3 days. When I did, the angel was gone. Not vandalized. Gone. Only a hole remained where the base had been, surrounded by chunks of marble and old turned earth. They said it collapsed in the storm, that age and weather had weakened the foundation. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But when they lifted what was left of the base, they found something buried underneath it. A child's coffin, unmarked. The wood was rotted through, and when they opened it, there was nothing inside but a porcelain doll. Blue dress, cracked smile, letters carved into the arm. Help me. They sealed the area and replaced the angel with a plain cross. Paul quit the week after. I stayed one more night. I told myself I'd walk past that spot one last time, just to prove to myself there was nothing left. When I got there, the ground was smooth, the air quiet. No fog, no sound. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something sticking out of the soil. A small, white porcelain hand. I knelt, brushed it off, and froze. It wasn't the doll this time. It was my name carved into the porcelain. Thomas Hale. The radio at my hip crackled to life, hissing softly. Don't let them cover me again. The air went cold. I dropped the doll and backed away slowly. The ground under the cross pulsed once, like something shifting below. I ran for the gate. Didn't look back, that was 2 weeks ago. Now, every time I turn off the lights in my apartment, I hear crying again. Soft and distant, like it's coming from inside the walls. I keep telling myself it's my imagination. That grief echoes in strange ways. But last night, I woke up to the sound of stone cracking, and there, in the corner of my room, half hidden in shadow, stood a small porcelain doll with mud on its feet, staring up at me, arms raised like an angel carved from white clay. I always told myself I'd quit before winter came. But grave digging's one of those jobs you don't walk away from clean. The earth holds you. The smell gets in your clothes, your hands, your dreams. You start hearing the soil shift even when you're nowhere near it. That last night the ground was already half frozen, and I was working alone, just me, the lantern light, and the hollow sound of the shovel hitting stone. They'd called me in late because someone from the church wanted a rush job. Said the burial needed to be done before sunrise. No name, no service, just a location. Plot 43B, far edge of the south field. I didn't ask questions. I never did. But that night, something felt wrong from the start. For one thing, the coffin was already there when I arrived. Usually, I dig the hole before the body comes in. This time, it sat waiting for me. Long black box resting on a wooden cart, frost clinging to the handles. There was a tag on the lid. No name, just 3 words written in shaky handwriting. Do not open. The air around it was still. Too still. No wind, no birds, not even the usual hum of the highway beyond the trees. Just silence. I remember the way the lantern flickered when I stepped closer, like the flame itself didn't want to be there. My shovel hit the first layer of frozen earth, and a deep metallic echo came back, like something hollow underneath. After a few minutes, the ground started giving off a strange smell. Not rot exactly, but old iron and wet dirt. It stuck to the back of my throat. That's when I heard the first knock, 3 dull thuds coming from the coffin. I froze. The shovel slipped from my hands, blade sinking into the mud. At first I told myself it was the wood settling in the cold. But then it came again. Knock, Knock, knock. And this time, between each thud, there was a faint scrape. Something, or someone, moving inside. My stomach turned to ice. I stepped back, nearly tripping over my lantern. "Hello?" The word came out before I could stop it. No answer. Just one more knock. I circled the coffin slowly, half expecting someone to jump out. The tag fluttered in the wind that hadn't been there a moment ago. "Do not open." But the knocking didn't stop. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, heart hammering, breath fogging in the cold air. Then stupidly I reached down and touched the lid. The wood was warm. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. "Someone there?" I whispered. The knock came again, this time from beneath the ground, not the coffin. The soil, like there was another layer below me. I stumbled back and looked down at the half-dug pit. The dirt shifted slightly, small ripples like something was pushing upward. "Please." It was faint, muffled, but clear. A man's voice coming from below the frost line. I felt sick. "Jesus Christ, hang on!" I started digging faster, hands blistering from the cold handle, breath tearing out in white bursts. The knocks grew frantic. I could hear wood creaking, the scrape of nails against the coffin walls. And then, silence. When I finally reached the depth where the sound had come from, my shovel hit something solid. I brushed away the dirt and saw another coffin, old, rotted, half-collapsed. It looked at least a century old, but the lid was moving. A faint breath escaped through the crack, followed by a whisper so soft it barely rose above the wind. Not him. Me. The surface above me creaked. I looked up. The new coffin and the one that had been waiting when I arrived and was shifting. The lid rising slowly, inch by inch. I scrambled out of the hole, hands covered in frozen mud. The lantern's light swung wildly as the coffin lid lifted just enough for something to slide out. A pale hand. Thin and gray, nails cracked but clean. It rested gently on the edge. Fingers twitching, I backed away. The hand moved again, gripping the wood tightly, pulling itself upward. A shoulder emerged, human-shaped but wrong. The skin looked stretched too tight, like parchment over bone, and then it spoke. "You dug too deep." I stumbled backward into the open grave behind me, landing hard on my back. My lantern fell in beside me and shattered, plunging everything into shadow. I clawed at the dirt, trying to get up, but something caught my ankle, cold, firm. I looked down. A hand, smaller this time, skeletal, was reaching up through the soil below, gripping my leg. "Bury him." The voice came from beneath me. I kicked free and scrambled out of the hole just as the frost cracked under my boots. The new coffin had stopped moving. The lid was shut again. For a second I thought it was over. Then I saw the ground begin to rise under the coffin. Slowly, steadily, like something was pushing it upward from below. And from the pit, a faint humming started, low, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. It grew louder. That's when I realized it wasn't one voice. It was many, whispering, chanting, humming from under the graves all around me. I turned and ran. My truck was parked just beyond the tree line, maybe 100 yards away. But every few steps the ground seemed to give, like I was running over hollow spaces. The humming followed me, weaving through the night air. When I finally reached the truck, the engine wouldn't start. The key turned, the dashboard flickered, then everything went dead. And then from the passenger seat beside me came a quiet, shaking breath. I turned. There was dirt on the seat. Fresh soil, and sitting there, barely visible in the moonlight, was a man, or what was left of one. His eyes were open, lips cracked, skin pale as wax. "You shouldn't have dug it," he whispered. Before I could react, he dissolved, collapsing into a pile of wet earth that spread across the seat and down onto the floor. The smell hit me, damp soil and rot. I gagged, threw the door open, and stumbled out. Behind me, the ground in the south field had split open. Dozens of narrow cracks spidering through the frost, steam rising from each one like breath in the cold. The chanting rose again, louder, urgent, coming from below. And then I saw them. Figures standing between the graves. Dozens, maybe hundreds, motionless silhouettes, too dark to be shadows but too still to be human. Each one turned their head toward me in perfect unison. "Finish it." The whisper rolled through the air like wind through dry leaves. I ran until my lungs burned. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I reached the highway. When I finally got home, I found dirt on my boots. Not from the cemetery, but darker, thicker, almost oily. The kind that clings even after you wash it. That night, I dreamed of the coffin again, except this time I was inside it. I could feel the weight of soil pressing down on the lid, the tight air burning my lungs. Then I heard that same humming, soft, rhythmic, like a lullaby from underground. When I woke up, my hands were covered in dirt. Real dirt. I quit the next morning. Told them I wasn't going back, but yesterday a letter showed up on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a burial notice for Plot 43B. The name written on it was mine, Thomas Weller, gravedigger, and below that in smaller letters, do not open. I burned the letter. But last night, while I was trying to sleep, I heard a shovel scraping outside my window. Slow, steady, like someone digging in the frozen ground. The sound hasn't stopped since. I think they're finishing the job I started. I didn't find the recorder. It found me. That's what I tell myself anyway, that I wasn't looking for it. Because if I admit I was, then maybe I was already hearing the voices before I pressed play. It started 3 weeks ago, when the grounds crew reopened the old Whitlock crypt. The place had been sealed since the 60s, half collapsed from erosion, too dangerous to enter. But the church finally got funding to restore it, and my job, as usual, was to document everything for the archive. I worked nights alone because I preferred it that way. The first night I went down there, the air hit me like cold breath. It smelled of iron, stone dust, and something faintly sweet. The kind of sweetness that doesn't belong underground. The gate squealed open, and my flashlight beam cut through a thick veil of cobwebs. I remember whispering, "Jesus," to myself. My voice echoed back, except it wasn't quite my voice. It came back half a second too late, softer, like someone repeating me. That was the first sign. The second came when I found the recorder. It was sitting on top of a marble sarcophagus near the back, an old Olympus digital one, covered in dust but not corroded. The red record light was blinking faintly like a dying heartbeat. It shouldn't have had power after all these years. Curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. For a moment there was nothing but static. Then a man's voice, cummy, tired, shaky, came through. "If anyone finds this, I'm still here. Please, I can't get out." I froze. He sounded close. Like right next to me, close. The recording continued. Frantic breathing, the scrape of stone, then silence. I checked the sarcophagus under the recorder. No signs of forced entry, no loose lid. The name carved on the side read, Henry Whitlock, 1889-1957. I turned the recorder over. The date stamp read December 12, 1957. Impossible. Digital recorders didn't even exist back then. I left it there. Told myself I'd come back with equipment, maybe the audio tech from town. But that night at home, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that voice faintly in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blinking red light in the dark. At 2:37 a.m., my phone started recording by itself. No incoming call, no app open. Just the sound of static, then a whisper. "You found me." I threw the phone across the room. When I picked it up the next morning, the recording was gone. But there was a new voicemail. No number, no timestamp. Just the same voice saying, "Come back." It's louder now. I should have deleted it. Should have ignored it. But I didn't. The next night I went back to the crypt. The air was colder. The flashlight beam flickered. I swear I could see my breath crystallize in midair, hanging there like smoke that refused to fade. The recorder was still on the sarcophagus, but now the red light wasn't blinking. It was solid. I pressed play again. This time there was more. I hear them. Under the floor. They're talking. I think they can see me. Oh God, I shouldn't have. Then a loud crack, like stone splitting, roared and the man screamed. Not in pain, but in terror. They're not dead. The recorder clicked off. My flashlight dimmed. And from the far end of the crypt, I heard the sound of someone breathing. Long, shallow, wheezing breaths. I swung the light toward the sound. Empty stone, cobwebs, dust. Nothing there. Then the recorder turned itself on again. "I can see you," the voice whispered. I dropped it and bolted for the exit. The air felt thicker, heavier, like running underwater. When I reached the gate, it slammed shut on its own. The lock clicked behind me. Something dragged across the floor. Slow, scraping, like stone on stone. I turned just in time to see the sarcophagus lid shifting open. Only a few inches, but enough for a hand to push through, not skeletal, not decayed, a hand that looked freshly alive, pale and shaking. Dirt packed beneath the nails. Play it again. The voice came from inside the recorder, now lying on the floor, speaker crackling. I grabbed it and ran, slamming into the gate until the lock gave. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. When I played the recorder back at home, the file was blank. Just 30 minutes of static, but under the hiss I could hear faint whispers. They weren't all the same voice. Some were deep, some high, some barely more than breath. But together they formed words in incomplete, overlapping, cold. Still here. Record us. That's when I noticed something else, my own voice faintly layered under theirs. Don't stop recording. I don't remember ever saying that. The next few days blurred together. My phone kept turning on in the middle of the night. Once I woke to find the voice recorder sitting on my kitchen counter. Though I'd locked it in my car, every time I pressed play, there were new sounds. Footsteps, breathing, stone cracking, and once, faint laughter. I called the archive office to tell them I was done, but they said the crypt was sealed again. No one had been down there since me. No one was authorized to. Then how had the recorder moved? That night I dreamed of being underground. I could hear hundreds of faint, overlapping voices all whispering into my ear, repeating one word over and over. Document. When I woke up, my sheets were damp and there was dirt under my nails. I checked my phone. A new audio file was saved. The timestamp read December 12, 1957. I pressed play. They said the recorder could hear through time. The man's voice said, weak and shaking. They said it's a bridge. Another voice, and closer, clearer, spoke right over his, and now you're part of it. The file ended abruptly. I turned the phone off. The static didn't stop. It kept buzzing faintly in my room like the air itself was humming. By morning, every device in my apartment had a new audio file on it. My laptop, my tablet, even my car's dashcam, all with the same name, Whitlock Recording 09 Wave. Every single one was 2 minutes and 47 seconds long. Every single one started the same way, with my own voice saying, testing, testing, followed by that man whispering, you can hear me. I tried deleting them. They came back. I tried smashing the recorder. When I did, it didn't break. It split open, revealing something inside that wasn't circuitry. Bone. A small fragment, smooth and white, with tiny grooves running through it like carvings. I threw it in the sink and turned the water on full blast. The bone didn't move. It just hissed, not from heat, but like it was whispering back. Still here, I don't remember much after that. I must have passed out on the kitchen floor. When I woke up, it was dark. The power was out. And somewhere in the house, the recorder was playing again. Not static this time. Music, a faint, scratchy tune, like an old hymn warped by time. I followed the sound into the living room. The recorder sat in the center of the floor, red light pulsing. The music stopped. You came back, the man's voice said. I whispered, what do you want from me? To finish the record. Then the sound changed. Layers of breathing, crying, muttering, but until it wasn't just a voice anymore. It was hundreds, thousands, all whispering through that tiny speaker, rising and falling like waves. I covered my ears, but I could still hear them. They weren't coming from the recorder anymore. They were coming from the walls, the floor, the air itself. Say your name, they whispered. I didn't. I wouldn't. But something else did. The recorder spoke in my voice, clear and perfect. My name is Daniel Carter. I hear you. The static exploded, shaking the room. The lights flickered once, twice, and then everything went dark. When I woke up, it was morning. The recorder was gone. My phone had 47 new files, each one titled Crypt Log DC. The first file was just my breathing. The second, the sound of stone moving. The third, and I swear to God, was my voice saying, let me out. But I don't remember recording it. I don't go to the cemetery anymore. I don't go near the church. I barely sleep. Yet every night around 3:14 a.m., my phone lights up on its own and starts recording. The red light blinks just like it did in the crypt, and when I play it back in the morning, I always hear the same thing. Faint, overlapping whispers building until one voice rises above the rest. You're documenting the dead, but the dead are documenting you too. I think that's what the Whitlock crypt really was, and not a tomb, but an archive, a place where sound doesn't die. Last night I woke to the smell of cold stone and the faint sweetness of iron again, and on my desk, where my phone should have been charging, sat the recorder. Red light steady. Waiting, I picked it up. "Say your name," it whispered. I don't remember what happened after that. This morning, there was a new entry in the archive system, not one I uploaded. Carter, Daniel, 1987-2024, file complete. The recorder's gone now, but I can still hear it, in the hum of my fridge, the buzz of the streetlight outside, the tiny pulse inside my ear when I try to sleep. And sometimes, just before dawn, I hear the voice again, calm, patient, whispering right against my skin. Your turn to keep recording.